Good morning and welcome to the Night Owl Show. Not held at night, we're meeting with you this morning. And we're excited here at WGU because all month we've been celebrating Financial Literacy Month. And I'm super excited about today's show because we've got some experts here that are going to share some great tips and insights on the topics of budgeting, student debt, and savings. And I think this is a great topic and something I'm looking forward to, and hopefully it will be helpful for you. We remind all of our viewers that we will be taking questions and answers here in about a half hour or so. So please comment in the comments section your questions, anything you need help or assistance with, and tell us why you're here, why you're joining today. We'd love to hear from all of you. So I want to introduce our guests and have them introduce themselves. Joined by Casey, Christy, and Jared. Good morning, all.
Morning. Morning.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good.
Good. Thank you for being here and for providing this this insight for this audience. So Casey, do you mind starting and introducing yourself?
Yeah, I'm a senior manager in the business college here at the university. But before doing that, I spent about 7 years doing one-on-one financial counseling with families, helping them set up budgets, dealing with crisis situations, and just trying to win with money, right? Just trying to get to that next level and reach their goals financially.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks again for being here. We look forward to hearing your tips and insights. Christy.
I'm Christy Antoni. I work in the Financial Services Department. I've been at WGU for 15 years, in the Financial Services Department for about 9. So every day I work with students and getting their financial aid and dealing with student-related debt. And I also have my own personal experience in just recently graduating from school and going through that phase of having to pay all that back.
Okay, excellent. Well, we look forward to hearing about student debt, how to avoid it, how to borrow responsibly, and those tips that can help our audience here today. And for those that don't know, WGU, I think, just celebrated our 21st birthday. So we're relatively, in terms of universities, a newer university. And you've been with the university for 15 years?
Yeah, I started when I was 12. So, no, I started right out of college or high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, you've seen a ton of growth then over that 15
Yeah,
15
we used
years.
to be in a basement office and have our little meetings in a lunchroom.
Okay.
So it's great.
And now over 100,000 graduates
Yeah.
from WGU and approaching 100,000 students, which is really cool.
Right.
Thank you, Christy. Jared, last but not least, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Jared Benson. I work for NFP. We're a corporate consulting firm specializing in employee benefits and retirement plans. We also do corporate financial wellness, and we actually work with WGU and the employees here on financial wellness and financial literacy. So I'm excited to be here.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. I can say I've sat through a session or two with Jared, and great advice and great insights. So I'm excited for you to share as well with our audience some insights. So we didn't plan this, but I believe that today is tax day. Is that right?
That's right.
It's not the 15th, but I understand there were some issues, I think, with the IRS site yesterday. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, they kicked it off. Everybody who tried to file their return yesterday, or at least pay online, were told that it would not be up until December 31st, $99.99. So
we've got some time, is what you're telling me.
8 millennia left.
Okay. So in all seriousness, though, today is the day. So if you have not filed your taxes or you've got an extension, because of that little hiccup on their site, you can file through the end of today. Is that right?
Yeah.
Supposedly. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
I'm sure no WGU people waited till the last minute.
Probably
so we're
no procrastinating.
we're probably fine.
Exactly. Well, very good. Well, this feels a little bit like the Merv Griffin set. You guys Seinfeld fans, don't you feel kind of like, we're here on set. If Newman shows up down there on the end, you know we're in trouble. So, well, very good. Are you guys ready to get started?
Yeah.
Okay. So to get started, we have posted, I believe in the last couple of weeks, we put out really an unscientific poll, but we just wanted to check in with our audience on these topics. And so I want to read the first question on budgeting, which Casey, you're going to be taking. So the question that we asked was, do you have a budget? And 48%, so nearly half, said yes, they do. 30% said yes, but I don't stick to it. 17% said no, but I need one. And 4% said nope, and I don't need one. And I'm really trying my best to get into that last group. Wouldn't that be cool I don't need a budget, which you would disagree with, right? Everybody needs a budget.
Yeah.
So any of those numbers surprise you? So the majority of those that were polled said yes, it's needed.
Yeah.
But I think there's a few, the 30%, that said yes, I have a budget, but I need help, sticking to it. Can you share some insights and hopefully some tips that can help all of those that replied, but particularly those that maybe know that it's important but need a little assistance?
Sure, and I think everyone's had that moment with budgeting where they've had the great intentions. I'm going to tighten my belt. I'm going to do better, with what I'm doing, and then they get a week or two into it, and it ends up in the garbage. And that's my story, and that's totally what happened. I would try to create these elaborate spreadsheets. I'm a business guy. I like that, and I would hand them to my wife, or I'd show my wife and say, "Hey, this is what I think we should do," and she would be like, "Okay, this is very complicated," or you didn't budget for food, right? Like, oh man, I missed that.
Somewhat important.
Yeah, I guess we got to eat, right? And so there are some tips that help a budget to work. And in working with nearly 700 families, I've seen some pitfalls and I've seen some things that help people stick to a budget, make it really work.
Okay, so for those that, again, think it's important but maybe don't know the best place to start,
Sure.
What would you say to them? How do you get them started?
Yeah, I think first off, you have to have a goal. And anyone who says that they actually like the budgeting process is probably lying or probably stretching the truth a little bit, because it's not fun, right? It's a lot more fun to spend money than it is to actually do what we know we need to do with money. And so by starting with a goal, starting with something that you can work towards, it helps when you're at the Apple store and there's an impulse decision, right? Or it's like, I have to say no to some spending, but if I have a different mindset of I'm saying no to this so that I can say yes to this. And, for my family, right now, we're saving for crazy vacations. Like, that is what we're all about right now. And so it's easier to say no to some of the other stuff because I know that if I work my budget, if I do what I'm supposed to, and then I'm going to get a reward for that, and I'm going to have some fun with it.
I like that.
Yep.
Okay, so first have a goal.
Yep.
Then what's next?
Yeah, I think after you have a goal, you have to have a plan. And the biggest part is getting it down on paper, or getting an agreed on plan, something that you can then hold yourself accountable to. And working with lots of people on this, I would meet people and they would say, I have a general idea of what my budget is, or I have an idea of where my money goes. And then what I do is I'd have them add up their bank statements, right? And how much did you spend in each category? And they'd be like, I had no idea my family was spending $600 going out to eat every month, right? Or any of these things. So you have to have a plan for your money and have it written down. So I'm a fan of keeping it as simple as possible. So putting the income at the top of the page and then spending every dollar of that income on paper before you ever get the money. And that way, when the money comes in, you go shopping, right? Then you have a plan for where that money's supposed to go. Makes it a little easier.
Yeah, a little easier and probably a little more responsible where, like you say, you're not going to have this impulse buy creep up because you've already told your money essentially where
exactly.
It's going. So, okay, So have a goal, write it down, and then what?
The next is you have to get agreement. And in my story, where I would create these big budgets and then I'd bring them to my wife and she wasn't a part of them at all, like nothing was happening in that moment because all of the stakeholders weren't involved. And so whoever has influence or whoever has control over spending the money needs to be part of the process. And I've noticed, especially with couples, that it's very easy. Usually there's one person that's more into it than the other person. Mm-hmm. And so they will take the lead. And then the other person's like, well, maybe that'll happen. I'm not sure. But we have to be in agreement about what we're doing. And for married couples, it's the number one cause of divorce in America is financial problems. And so I think we fight at the wrong time with money. Instead of fighting about our values and our priorities and our plan for the money, we fight later because we didn't have a plan, right? And so how could you spend that? Well, why can't I spend that, right? Because we didn't have an agreement on what we were doing in the first place.
Yeah, I see. And probably important to get that agreement on the goal, right? If
That's
everybody's
right.
on the same page on, okay, we're gonna budget because of we want to go on a vacation or because we're saving for a home or something like that. I would assume that's helpful.
And then make it visual, right? Do a poster board, like print out a picture of where you want to go, right? Make it your computer screensaver so that you're constantly reminded of why you're doing this.
Okay. And if you're not married or don't have a significant other,
Yeah.
is there still a need to get an agreement?
Yeah, accountability is even more important with that group. And there's a term in the industry that we call lonely spending, meaning that to hang out with other people, to be around our peers and our friends, generally we go and spend money. We go to a movie, we go out to eat, we go to these things where a married couple will spend more of that time at home. And so that single couple will spend extra money just to be part of a community. And so they need an accountability partner, someone that loves them enough to say, hey, this wasn't part of your plan, right? Like, you don't need 4 pairs of the same boots, right? Like, that's not part of your plan. Not a shopping buddy.
Not a shopping
Not
buddy.
a shopping
Okay.
buddy. I have friends like that tell me about their latest iPad, and then I want that latest iPad. That's not a good accountability person. But someone who had said, I thought you were going to Jamaica, right? Or I thought you had this other plan. That's the person you need for accountability.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I like that. So get the agreement. And then what's next?
So that first part is actually pretty easy. Those first 3 steps are actually even kind of fun to do if you have the right mindset. But then you got to actually work the budget, and that's where it starts to get hard. And so I recommend that people set a weekly budget meeting. Doesn't that sound fun?
Okay.
A weekly budget meeting. So 1 hour, 1 day a week where they work on their finances. And so they will go into the budget, they'll sync it up. What did I spend in this area? Am I over in any areas? Do I need to adjust? But a check-in process with their money. And then thinking ahead, okay, what does the next week look like in terms of my finances? Oh man, this week is crazy. Wednesday, we got a basketball game. Thursday, I'm working late for work. I bet I'm going out to eat on Wednesday night. I better set some money aside for that, right? Like, just thinking financially through their week, it's easy to just become reactive if you don't.
Okay, I like this. And then your 5th and final tip?
Yeah, and this one is hard for me, and I think will be hard for a lot of people that are perfectionists, is give yourself some grace in the beginning and be flexible with your budget. If I thought of budgeting like music, I would say it's much more like jazz music than it is like classical music. There's some ebbs and flows. There's unplanned expenses that happen, a tire that blows on the way home from work, or a kid breaks an arm, right? And you have to come up with that money. It's okay to go back to your budget and adjust those numbers. And especially in the beginning, give yourself some time and ask yourself, am I making progress each month? Am I better this month than I was last month? And then be happy with that. And don't be so upset if you didn't reach every goal. Be excited about the progress that you made.
Okay. I appreciate that last comment because I think for a lot of people, budgeting, again, it's terrifying. It's not fun.
Yeah.
And it's something where if you do mess up, it's like, do you throw the budget out and just say, well, I can't budget?
Yeah.
And then you're stuck in the camp of, I know it's important, I know I should be doing it, but I've stepped off the path.
It's really true. And I've met with so many people that are like, I can't budget, and they have this reason why. I have a variable income, or I can't budget because I don't have enough to pay my bills. And in every case, just getting the plan down on paper, people feel like they got a raise, right? Just having a plan for where the money's going stops some of the drift with your spending.
Okay, very good. Very helpful. Again, if you've got questions on budgeting or any of the other topics, please put them in the comments section. We'll be getting to those here in a few minutes. But any thoughts kind of as we wrap up, any summary for those that, again, trying to get back into budgeting?
Yeah, I think it's something we all know that we need to do, right? And knowledge is not the issue here. Like, we all know if we just did what we knew to do, we would all have 6 packs and be rich, right? Because we know it's about actually the personal part of personal finance, the motivation part of it. And I think the best place to start is just, what's the next step I need to take?
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Christy, can we turn to you and talk about student debt and the reduction of debt? Same thing, we had a poll question, and so I wanted to read you and our panel here this question and the answers. Do you have student debt was the question. And this was interesting because I think somebody commented this answer, and it actually was our highest scoring answer, so people agreed with it. They say, I'm a current or former student with former school debt. and only a miracle will pay it all off. 38% said that. So they're either current student, they've got past debt, and it sounds like they need a little assistance. So let me keep going, and then I want you to speak to these people that feel like only a miracle is going to help them. I'm a graduate with student-related debt, 21%. I'm a graduate and debt-free, 19%. So good for them. I'm a current student with student-related debt, 14%. And then lastly, I'm a current student and debt-free, 7%. So do any of those numbers strike you or stand out to you?
No, I think that's pretty common of what you'll see at most places. I think with the ones, it'll be a miracle to pay them back. I feel like there's a lot of people in that situation because a lot of people who go in and take out student loans, they don't think about it. It's like any other loan that you take out. You're taking out a car loan or a house loan or something like that. Look and see if you can make those payments. So same with student loans. When you're going into school, or especially like when you're coming back to WGU, it'll take you X amount of years, 2, 3, 4 years. Figure out how much you need to borrow and then how much your repayment would be, how much your payments every month, and make sure that that's something that's doable, especially the field that you're looking at going into. So I think with those people who, they've graduated, they have this large amount of debt, they don't know or this student loan they don't know what to do with. It's really important that they reach out to their servicer. There are so many repayment options available. So sometimes they will think, I can't make this payment every month, I'm just not going to pay it. Well, that's a problem because they're going into default. And there's so many options available to them. There's income driven that reduces the payment that you make based on what your income is. There's forbearance. There's different options that they have so that they don't go into default. So my main thing I want to get across here to those people who don't feel like they can pay this back is there are options. There are options to make any sort of payment. Also look at it from a standpoint of just any other debt. I recently just graduated, and my last course that I took, which I wish, I know, yay, finally, awesome. I'm a doctor, but not really. My last course, which I wish was my first course that I took, was a finance management course. And it was a lot based on Dave Ramsey's stuff, and it talked about his policy of, pay off the smallest debt and then work your way up to the largest debt. So pay off as much as you, or put as much as you can on that smaller, make the minimum payments on the rest. Then when that smaller one is paid off, take that payment that you would have made on that smaller and make it on the next smallest one. And then, so you're not taking that money, I've paid off a debt, I'm going to go shopping or go wherever. You're paying it on the next one. So gradually you will have a larger funds to pay towards those student loans, because that's probably most likely one of your larger debts.
Probably for most people. It's interesting, the latest stat I heard is $1.4 trillion in student debt across the country. I'm sure it's climbing. It could be 1.5 by the time we're done with this show here today. Right. But a lot of people are in this camp and need some advice and need some assistance. Any other tips that you would offer in paying off student debt or debt in general? So
I think it's really important. I think we've gotten to this point where we're at the 1.4 trillion because it's 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds going into college, and they don't understand. They don't understand what financial aid is. They don't understand it's going to accrue interest, that it's stuff they're going to have to pay back. So like me, I get a check back, and I was like, oh, great, this can be my shopping, or I need to go on a date, so I need to get a new outfit or something like that. And then they realize once they graduate, I have all this money I need to pay back. So be informed. Make sure, for our students, they're older, and I feel like they would be more, but even letting informing their kids about the student loans and taking those out, and that they do accrue interest, and it is stuff that does need to be paid back. So making sure that they're just informed about it.
Yeah, and at WGU, I think you've been involved with this, but WGU has a responsible borrowing initiatives that they encourage students to borrow responsibly. Do you want to touch on that a little bit, on what we're doing here at the university?
Yeah, so about in 2013, we launched a campaign to have our students only borrow recommended loan amounts. So only borrow enough to cover tuition and fees. And with that, we have been able to reduce our student debt by 40%.
Wow.
The average student graduating from WGU has half the debt than they would at a traditional. So we have, what was the number? 16,000 is the average amount of student debt they have when they graduate at WGU. The national average is over 37,000.
Wow.
So, and we have this RBI program, which has students who have above a certain amount of student loans when they come to WGU. They'll go into this program, and it limits how much they can borrow. And we do that not only to reduce their debt, but so that they have enough funds to finish going to WGU, because eventually they do max out the federal loans that you can receive.
Okay. All right, that's interesting. So you kind of touched on this, but what are some tips for current students either who have borrowed or are considering borrowing so that they're not overwhelmed with the burden of debt when they graduate?
So like I talked about with the recommended loan amount, that's what we call it. That's just borrowing tuition and fees, just enough to cover your cost here at WGU. We're an online university. You can work while you're going to school. That's what most of our students do. So you don't really need that excess funds or that excess amount of loan to be able to live. They can just borrow enough for tuition and fees. Another one is with some of these loans, like for example, the unsubsidized loan, it is accruing interest while you're in school. So we recommend paying that interest because what will happen is if you don't pay it, it capitalizes and is added onto the amount at the end and then accruing interest again. So we definitely recommend paying that interest while you're in school. And you know, if you can, make payments on the loans.
What is that interest? Not an exact number, but it's a fairly manageable interest payment to make while you're in school. Is that right?
Right. The interest rate for an unsubsidized for our undergrad students is 4.45%.
Okay.
For the graduate, it's 6%.
Okay, so that's manageable, and it's probably like you say. I mean, it sounds like a great idea if you're paying it along the way. It's not going to be accruing interest on top of interest, and then you're,
right.
Congratulations, you've graduated. Here's a present, kind of thing.
And it's also an option for current students or future students that are planning on attending WGU or going back to school. There's a lot of programs out there. There's the Pell Grant. There's scholarships. There's state grants. There's even if there's not a WGU scholarship, there's outside scholarships. There's always some sort of funding that you can get if you don't want to go into further debt with those loans.
Okay, this is super helpful. Are there additional resources that you could share with our audience?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, you want to make sure before you take out loans that you're informed, that you know all the information, know what you're getting into. And there's a great website. It's Student Aid, so studentaid.ed.gov, G-O-V.
Okay.
So that's a great resource. It talks all about borrowing, what you do once you've graduated, and repayment options, and stuff like that.
Okay, very good. Anything else that you want to share? We'll come back to you again with questions, but anything else?
No, just if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to the Financial Services Department.
Okay.
Our phone number is 877-435-7948, and the extension is 3104. And we'd be happy to help anybody with any questions.
Okay, and I believe also on the wgu.edu website, there's a financial aid section of the website, correct? Scholarships information is there.
Correct.
So definitely check that out and call the number that you mentioned to talk one-on-one about your specific needs. So very good. Christy, thank you. Jared, let's talk about savings, which I consider similar to budgeting. I think savings is something I know, and I think we all know that we need to do, and it's something that maybe we need a jump start from you. So let me start with the poll question and then give us some tips and give us some insights on how we can either get started or if we are currently saving, how we can maybe make sure that we're making the most. So the question that we posed was, how good are you at saving money? 38%, which was the top answer, is I have a 401k and I put away a little extra every month, but I could do a better job. 23% said I'm good at spending money, which I think is the opposite, correct, of what we're striving to do. So I'm good at spending money. It's good to hear. That's about a quarter of the respondents. Also 23%, I need some help in this area. And 15%, I will retire very comfortably. So congrats to those 15% that are well on their way. Anything jump out to you with those numbers in this? I know it's an unscientific poll, but does that sound what you're saying?
I think that poll and the others and a lot of what Casey and Christy talked about is just it. And then in our experience, there's a lot of people that are feeling financial stress, right? And they're stressed for one reason or another, but finance is largely related to that. And savings, and oftentimes we'll speak with people and they say, I can't really talk about savings right now, I'm swimming in debt, or I'm struggling just with my today's finances, working day to day. And savings is often misunderstood. Savings is kind of the way to relieve that stress a little bit, or like lift the teapot off the lid off the teapot a little bit and kind of relieve some of that. And here's why. So if we look at savings and we kind of break it into 4 different categories, The first one would be the emergency fund. Okay? And everybody's kind of heard about this. You've probably learned about it with Dave Ramsey and everything else. Mm-hmm. The emergency fund is really the best way to kind of take that pressure off, right? Because it's what helps you weather those unexpected circumstances. And so if you're laid off of work, or if there's a natural disaster, or there's some situation that you weren't expecting to occur, having that emergency fund to fall back on helps relieve a lot of financial stress and a lot of financial hardship. And so when we talk with people about savings and developing kind of a savings regimen, the foundation of that is, let's get an emergency fund set up. Okay, and this is, you'd want to start with a 3-month savings before you get anywhere else, and then slowly build that to about 6 months over time.
Okay, so to clarify, about 3 months of your day-to-day expenses, your monthly expenses. So start with 3 months.
Start with 3 months, and then slowly build that up to about 6 months over time. And once you've hit the 3, you can kind of start to budget savings items in other categories that we're about to talk about. So the emergency fund is critical, and it's the foundation behind any savings. Next would be a short-term savings. And Casey talked about budgeting, and I'm a huge fan of this. It's critical to have savings as part of your budget. And so he talked about spending every dollar, right? Some of those categories should be in savings areas. So the short-term savings would be like your vacation, saving for a vacation, or saving for Christmas, or expenses that you know are going to occur, you just don't know when, right? Like your automobile is going to break down eventually, or you're going to have to replace an appliance in your home. So the short-term savings is where that goes. And so the way to do this best, to avoid some of those situations becoming financially burdensome, is to save just a little bit out of every single paycheck. Have it as part of your budget, right? So $50 toward every paycheck goes to my automobile account. And so when those unexpected occur, when the transmission breaks or you blow a tire, you're not feeling additional financial stress as a result of that. You've got a budget to pay for it. You know it's there. And so like the emergency fund, the short-term savings is a great way to kind of relieve stress and help live within your financial means. The next category would be kind of intermediate savings, okay? And that's a broader range, right? It could be anything from you're knowing you're going to have to replace a new vehicle and you don't want to finance it, right? You want to pay for it in cash. And so you may have 5 years before you need to replace a car, and so you've got a 5-year savings account or a CD that you're putting money into to budget for an automobile. It could be something a little bit longer term, like you're looking to finance a down payment on a home, or for home repair, or home renovation, something like that. Okay. And this is one of those categories that's a little bit tougher because you have to be disciplined. This is money that's probably going to be sitting there a little bit longer. And so one way to help with that is put it into something that's a little less liquid than your bank account or your savings account, right? Something that you can't touch, like a CD, or college education for a child in a 529 savings plan, something like that. And the last category is long-term. Okay, so this is your retirement fund, right? And I think, according to the poll and according to our research and our experience, people are doing a better job of this, actually. And I think because we have financial vehicles that make it a little bit more simple, right? Like the 403 plan or 401k plan through work, we kind of set it on automatic, right? You set it and forget it, and a little bit of your paycheck comes out every month. You don't have to have much discipline, short of signing up for it to begin with, right? And because this is a longer-term account, it's got a long time horizon, you can afford to take on some risk. And your 401k or your 403b plan gives you access to invest in the market where you can take on risk and have a greater expectation of achieving your financial goals. So really, those are the 4 major categories. Okay. You want the emergency, short, intermediate, and long. Intermediate and long.
Okay. Great information. I'm curious as to how you advise those that you work with. What percentage of their income should they save? Here.
So we get this question a lot, and that's a moving target too. I mean, even when I started working here and focused on retirement specifically, we would say 10 to 15%. And even over the last decade, that number has kind of bumped up to 15 to 20%. And largely, we're living longer, and inflation, things are becoming more expensive. But ultimately, if we're looking at savings more holistically, 15 to 20% is what we're telling people to save for retirement. I'm also telling you, you should be saving for your emergency fund and your short and intermediate term. So of every paycheck, if you're in the 30% range of money you're not consuming today, that's probably a pretty good number to shoot for.
Okay, that's helpful. So that, to be honest, I think that's for most people probably a little higher than maybe they can allocate. I think it's interesting, and I would agree. In my, I'm not an expert here, but I think long-term saving, you can just put it on autopilot and put it away. I think that some of the short-term stuff might be a little more challenging. So what tips would you provide? How can someone get started on the short, intermediate, and long in addition to the...
That's a good point. And I'm a big fan of living life on easy mode myself too, right? Like so automatic, making everything, automate everything. I'm a huge fan of that. And there are some tools and resources that can help us. So some tips that I want to kind of make sure that everybody's aware of. The first one would be budget for savings, okay? So what Casey talked about, and we already kind of touched on it, but part of your budget that you're spending every dollar is going to consist of saving in each one of those categories, right? And you can start small, right? You don't have to dramatically alter your lifestyle to start a savings regimen today, but start small and then kind of work your way up over time. The next tip I would suggest would be to avoid lifestyle creep. Okay, and this is maybe a term, it's a fairly new term, but it's something that we're all experiencing in real time, right? Like it's the Netflix economy. So when Netflix first came out, everyone thought, oh, this is $7 or whatever it was, right? And you could afford $7, so you got into Netflix at $7 a month. And then suddenly there was a new add-on feature that bumped it to $9. And then and at that point we're already looking at the $7 as a sunk cost, so I can afford $2 for this.
Yeah.
And then it's $13, and then it's $18, and then that lifestyle sort of just creeps up and becomes more and more expensive over time. You want to avoid that at all cost, right? Just avoid the lifestyle creep altogether. Or temper it, or watch out for it.
Okay, I like that term, and I think that is interesting because Netflix is a perfect example. I'm sure there's others, but it's it's not that much, $2 more, and before you know, it's a cost that you weren't planning on, I guess.
Especially for WG graduates, they get their degree, they come up, and then it's pretty common for that income to go up, and so it's easy to do that, and you've been studying for several years and you've had no life because you've been trying to get your schooling done, and then all of a sudden you have some time and disposable income. It's easy for that to disappear.
You need to catch up on all your HBO shows.
Yeah, exactly. So the next one would be always save some or all of found money. Okay, so what found money is, and we've all had this happen to us before too, and this is a perfect time to be talking about it because it's tax season, but the tax refund, for example, would be considered found money, right? And some people are sort of anticipating its arrival, but oftentimes you're surprised at how much you get in your tax refund. And all too often, we've spent that money before it even shows up in our bank account, right? And we don't even know where it went, or we don't have anything to show for it. And so found money, a tax refund is a common, or a bonus at work, an unexpected bonus, or an inheritance from a great aunt that you've met 3 times, right? Like suddenly you get this money, what do I do with it? And all too often people gobble it up on things that they have no memory of, or that are short-term in nature.
They just go spend, right?
Yeah, go spend.
Burn a hole in their pocket.
Yeah. That could have been 2 of your 3-month emergency.
That's exactly right. And that's the biggest way. I'm glad you brought that up, Casey, because that's the biggest. Using found money is the best way to kind of jumpstart your savings regimen, right? Like if you're at a 3-month emergency savings, found money is a great way to get you to that 6-month right away, right? Or if you've got short-term goals, and it just enhances or boosts your current savings regimen. And I'm not suggesting all of it should be saved, right? Like
that's what I was going to ask. Because speaking up for the audience here, right? It's like you get a $1,000 tax refund, and man, I want to go spend that. I want to go buy. I want to take a trip. I want to go buy a toy, a technology, something like that. So kind of walk us through what's a good balance there.
You said Netflix was okay. So.
Netflix is okay. Yeah, no, do that. I mean, do the things. I'm not suggesting you should live like a pauper forever, right? Like the Dave Ramsey is live like no one else today, so you can live like no one else tomorrow. Well, we should really be kind of smoothing our consumption over a lifetime. Like we should just get our lifestyle should just get incrementally more expensive over our lifetime, right? And so if you're saving for a vacation and you have a tax return that's a little bit bigger than you'd expected, use it to spend an extra day on the beach, or go out to eat a little bit more often, but not to the point where you're altering your lifestyle to gobble all that up and then having to dramatically alter it back down when that money is gone, right?
Yeah.
So saving a portion of your found money would be another tip. The other would be to increase your saving, and this one's probably the most critical, right? This is increasing your savings with every increase in pay, like with a raise that you get, okay? And so the concept behind this, or the reason it's so important, is that the more money you make, the harder that income is to replace in retirement, right? Like we work so that we can buy things today. We save so that we can stop working and buy things when we're retired, right? And so the more money we make and the more expensive our lifestyle becomes, the harder that lifestyle is to maintain from the day you retire until the day you die. And so every time you get a raise, a portion of that, up to half of that, should be used to offset future consumption. And so if you get a 5% raise at work, 2.5% of that raise you're going to save, 2.5% you're going to use to increase your consumption, your lifestyle.
And I'm guessing if you're budgeting the right way, right? If you have the 5% raise, it's money that you're not used to.
Yeah,
so
exactly
if you do
right.
get a 2.5%, you know, in the way that you're presenting this, it's still an increase in income, and you're able to maybe spend a little bit more, but you're also being responsible.
And make it automatic, and do it immediately, right? Like you don't want to, you get the 10% raise, and then 6 months down the road, you start saving 5%, and you've already sort of gotten used to. We're adaptable human beings. We kind of learn to adjust our lifestyle based on our take-home pay, and so save it immediately. As soon as you get that raise, don't consume all of it. Like, don't gobble it all up.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen lots of clients I've worked with that have got a $300 raise and celebrated with a $400 car payment, right? So they're actually worse off, you know, than they were before.
Yeah, the lifestyle creep just kicking in, right?
It's a real thing.
So the next one is very similar to that, though. It's what we do with, you know, when we pay off a loan with that new money, right? It's almost like a raise. And Christy talked about this, that snowballing is critically important, right? When you take one payment, loan payment, once you've paid it off, to snowball it into the other. Debt payments are actually an important part of the lifestyle that we live, right? And it's an important part of budgeting. It forces us to kind of live sort of within our means and be regimented about where we're putting our money. And all too often, when we pay off that loan, we celebrate with getting a car more expensive than we can really afford, or something else where we've dramatically altered our lifestyle. We've gotten rid of that benefit, that forced regimen that debt payments gave us, and we've not allowed it to work in our favor. The way to make it work in your favor is you snowball it, and then when all of your debts are paid off, again, just like your raise, you're going to save up to half of that new money for future consumption. The big one is mortgage, right? Because some people are paying, you know, $1,000 to $4,000 a month in a mortgage, and suddenly that's paid off, and they become $1,000 to $4,000 a month more costly in their spending today, and that's hard to maintain in retirement and into the future.
Yeah, treat that as a raise.
Treat it as a raise, yeah, exactly right, and don't gobble it all up.
I like that. These are great. Thank you for the tips. Do you have resources or things that, you know, I know there's a lot of technology out there. What could you share with us that might be helpful?
Absolutely. So I mentioned I'm a big fan of living life on easy mode and in automatic mode. I think today it's easier than ever to save or to start saving just with technology that's out there. So most 401k plans, for example, allow you to set up automatic increase. So what this is while you're saving for retirement, you may be saving 5% today. You know you got to get to that kind of 10 to 15% or even 20%, but it's hard to do that all at once, right? And so small savings over time allow you to get there, and most 403b plans or 401k plans have this feature where it's called automatic escalation, where you can just set it up, say I'm at 5% today, but I want to increase it by 2% every single year until I get to that 15%. Then I'll stop it. Right? And that small, you don't even notice it. It's just small savings over time that just sort of incrementally goes up. And that's for future savings. But today there's apps or tools, like one's called that I use is called Acorns. And Acorns is cool. It's kind of a digital change jar, where every time I swipe my credit card at the grocery store or debit card somewhere, it's never a round number, right? I'm spending $1.47 or $1.12 at the gas station, and every time I swipe that card, Acorns will round up to the nearest whole dollar and siphon that change off and put it into a separate account.
Interesting.
And it's automatic, and you don't notice it, right? It's just a small little incremental piece to your budget, but over time that adds up. And I mean, last year my wife and I paid for Christmas with our Acorns account without even really noticing it. So those little things that kind of make it automatic or make it easy, definitely take advantage of the technology that's out there that exists.
That's great. Anything else before we move into the questions and answer period?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that all of these things are so related, right? That you can't be, you know, so overly sensitive on your budget or so overly concerned about your debt at the expense of budget or expense of saving, that kind of living financially well means that you're sort of focusing on all of these things, and it's
that
part
you
of
have
your
a plan.
lifestyle. And you have a plan, exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, great. This has been super helpful. Thank you, all three of you, for sharing your insight. We'd like to now turn it over to our audience to ask some questions. Again, we're celebrating Financial Literacy Month here at WGU, and we want to provide resources and information to you. And so, as I mentioned earlier, please put comments down, ask your questions, and we're going to tackle as many as we can. If we can't answer them all in the time allotment that we have, we will answer them within the next 24 to 48 hours. So, you guys ready for questions?
Yeah.
Okay, and anybody jump in here. The first question is, how can a couple get on the same page with money? We probably spent an hour talking about this. So Casey, do you want to tackle that first?
I'll start. I think the first thing to help you get on the same page is you need to spend some time dreaming together. You know, what could our life be like if we were out of debt? What could our life be like if we paid off our house and had that money, you know, to do? And then out of those dreams come action steps, right? And I know for me and my wife, when we started this process and we're dreaming about what we wanted to do, it was also a part of, hey, our kids are picking up on everything we're doing financially. And if we don't teach them, they're going to make the same mistakes that we made. And so looking back on our lives, what do we want to have said about our finances and our money? And we don't want to be crazy money people that are tightwads or anything like that, but we want to be able to say we left a legacy with our money.
Sure.
We left something for our kids. And so you got to start with that dream. And that's where I feel like goals of savings are awesome. Goals of debt reduction are awesome. But there has to be the next step after that. If we get out of debt, we can do this, right? If we save well for retirement, what can our retirement be, you know, versus, you know, what the average person is doing right now. So I think you got to start with dreaming and go to a coffee shop, you know, get away from the kids for a night, right? Go on a date and sit down, kneecap to kneecap, and let's decide who we want to be. Then we'll work out the details. But you got to first start with that vision.
I like that. Dream big.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I think that's great advice. One thing too, toward the end, you were talking about get away from the kids, or you got to get into a different environment. So my wife and I, when we talk about our budget, we start talking about it during like our walk. So we'll be on a walk together. And it's just, you know, that in and of itself is kind of releasing a little bit of pressure and tension a little bit. So it's more of a conversation. It's less of a fight or battle, and then it kind of motivates us when we get back to sort of start writing it down or doing things. And you know, the dream, starting with a dream is, you're not motivated by paying off debt. You're motivated by what you're going to get when you pay the debt off.
That's right. Yeah. I give an example of this for a while with my life. The dream was not connecting for us. Like we had the dreams of, you could have a big house, you could do this and that, and it was like, okay, but really that's not where our heart was taking us. Is we want to travel, we want to see the world, we want to experience different cultures. And once we got that dream right, it made a lot of the other process easier, the sacrifices you make so that you get to go and do that stuff that you want to do. So think out of the box. It doesn't necessarily need to be someone else's dream. Find your own dream, right? And then live it.
I like that. Let's take another question. Next we have, how do you budget when you have a variable income or hours? Should I find an average or plan for the worst?
Yeah, it's tricky. And I think what you do is you start with a worst case scenario.
Okay.
So let me look over my last 12 months of income. What was my worst month in those 12 months? And it was X, right? And so I'm going to build my budget off of X, and I'm going to spend X all the way down the paper. Then I'm going to draw a line and say, if I had $1 more than X, it's like algebra. If I had X plus 1, what does that $1 go to? Well, it goes to the next thing below the line, right? And so on and so forth. And then the other part, and this goes to savings, is if you have a variable income, I recommend you have something called a hill and valley account, meaning in that month, say your average income is $3,000, and you have that month where you do 6, right? And we're celebrating, life is good this month. Take that extra $3,000, put it in that savings so that when you have the month where you do $1,000, you can pull money from that and get that to a decent level where you feel comfortable, and then that will smooth out your budgeting process.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. More questions coming in. Thank you for these. These are great. What if I need to take several months off from my studies? Do I have to begin paying back my loans?
Great question. So if it's a new loan at WGU, You typically have with your servicer a grace period, a 6-month grace period,
Okay.
where when you stop going to school, you have 6 months before they're due. So if you take a term break or something like that with WGU, then you're fine because you have that, you're in that grace period. Now, if you have previous loans, you've come from another institution and you're coming to WGU and you've already used that grace period with that previous loan, you don't have it anymore. So you would have to pay, from the time that you stopped, the term break started. So it all depends on if you're coming in from another school and you have previous loans, then just reach out to your servicer and see if that grace period has been used up and if it's something that you would need to pay back right away. But all new loans will have a 6-month grace period. And the same if you graduate. You do have 6 months from when you graduate until when they would need to start being paid back.
Okay. You're kind of touching on this, but the next question, make sure that we answer this. So almost like a school deferment type period here. What about previous loans I have in other schools? So let's look at a scenario. Somebody maybe 5 years ago was going to school, they had loans. Will I need to keep paying those back when I enroll at WGU? Depends on the grace, which you just said, but maybe
right.
put
So
us a little clarity
once
on
you
this.
would enroll in school, they'd go into school deferment.
Okay.
We notify a company that notifies the servicers, and we don't do it until 30 days into your program. So typically you would still need to make that first month payment and then just check with your servicer and make sure that they've gone into in-school deferment. But they will go into in-school deferment while you're attending WGU. I would just caution to make sure that you're still paying that interest because interest is still going to be accruing on some of those loans.
Okay, very helpful, thank you. Another question, seemingly trivial things seem to add up over time like candy bars and McDonald's. So true. What strategies, right? What strategies can I use to reduce these expenses? I think that's a great question.
Yeah.
This is the lifestyle creep, right? That's occurring, and part of what Casey talked about, that weekly, budget meeting, is where you're identifying where your money went, right? And sometimes knowing how much you're spending on McDonald's is enough to motivate you to stop going there, oftentimes, right? And so if week over week you're looking at that and that number's going down, then that's lifestyle creeping its way back down, right? You just don't want that number going up is what I would suggest.
I think there's a couple things with this. One is you do need to have some flexibility in your budget, and we're quoting Dave Ramsey here today. He calls this blow money. Money you're just going to blow, right? And in our family, we didn't like that word. It sounded like a drug movie. So we changed it to we have woohoo money, right? This money that we can do whatever we want with, right?
Which sounds like a cheerleader.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or the best financial class you ever took. And so we have this money where it's like we don't talk about where we spend it. It's just if you want to grab a water at the gas station or something like that. You do want that number to have a number that you're okay with doing that. And what you'll find, because that number is generally low, is it automatically changes some of your thinking of, look, I have $20 of this money. If I go and buy a drink at the gas station, that's $2. I could have bought a 12-pack at the grocery store for the same price. Like, because that money's so precious that you automatically stop doing stuff like that. And then you never feel like you can't do something. It's, okay, I'm doing this instead of this. Like, I'm going to McDonald's instead of having the extra day on the beach, that I want on vacation. And it helps to just reframe some of that in your mind.
So would you build money into your budget for the woohoo money you're saying? You'd put a number, $50, $25, $100, whatever it is.
You got to have it. It's like it's like the idea of not having some flexibility in a budget or I call it the lubricant of the budget, meaning that like you wouldn't run your car without oil, right? And all those parts touching each other. You need to have some money set aside that is money that just can fill in the gaps. And I tell you, me and my wife, we've done this for a long time. We each take, some money each month, and our different personalities get represented in how we spend that. So I take $20 of it, put it into savings. Then I spend $20 each week, almost exclusively on Starbucks, right? But my wife will have $87 at the end of the month, and she will find something to buy for $87. That's her personality. And so it allows for some different personality types inside of budgeting too.
Yeah. What's interesting listening to you guys talk about this is to me it sounds like it's an eye-opening experience to really track where the money goes. Because to your point, these trivial things, if you're not careful and not watching them, you could spend $100+ on something that you didn't even realize that you could be spending in a better place.
And one other tip I would give on that is if it's an area that you struggle with overspending in, you may need to get more analog with how you're doing it. And you may need to say, okay, our food budget is this much money. In order to control that budget, we're going to take that cash out of the bank. We're going to put it in an envelope. And every time we buy groceries, we're going to take money out of that envelope. And that just touching that money makes it a little more painful. And it also gives you an idea of when you need to stop. The danger of automation is also the benefit of automation, right? Is that I can do it and forget about it. But it works the other way too in spending, is if you have no idea what you're spending because it's automated, you'll look up and you'll spend $300 on restaurants in a month. And not even like, I don't even eat out that much, they do, but you spend
can get out of
money.
control
it's
in
easy.
a hurry. Very good.
I've heard some lady that I follow, one of the bloggers, with the envelope method, she doesn't actually put cash in there because she doesn't like to carry cash, but she'll have an envelope that says like grocery, and at the top of it will say like $200 or whatever. So every time she goes to the grocery store, that envelope's in there and she takes it out and writes how much, So each one of those she can keep track. So she doesn't actually have to have that cash. She can just have the envelopes and see the amounts.
And there's some digital ways to do this now too. I found the power though really is in holding the cash. And I think it was McDonald's did a study on this that showed that the average person's spending with plastic versus spending with cash, they spend 19% more than someone who's actually using Uncle Benjamin that's been in my wallet, right? That's now a member of my family. I have to give him up. It's a little more painful. And I can think, okay, I have $5 for lunch. I'm looking at that menu versus, I'm just going to swipe my plastic. Who knows? And it's why companies are okay with you using plastic. If you think about it, they're paying merchant fees every time you use that. But if you're going to spend 19% more, I'm happy to pay a 3% merchant fee, no problem, right?
It's that whole psychology.
Yeah, so it's rewiring some of your thinking with that.
Interesting, very good. Christy, another financial aid question. Should I take into account the potential earnings of my college major when I'm taking out financial aid?
Oh, definitely. Just like you would, like I said, with taking out a car loan or a house loan, take into account, what field you're going into. And there are a lot of resources out there that'll say, okay, you borrow this much, this is the interest rate, this is what your monthly payment would be. So look at it over a certain amount of time. How long is this going to, it's going to take me 3 years to get this degree. I'm paying $7,000 a year, whatever you are. How much is that going to be at the end with the interest? And then how much will my monthly payments be? So take that into consideration, just like you would any other type of loan or money that you're borrowing.
Okay.
I think with student loans too, it's really easy for a student loan to become part of your life and you become complacent in it. I'm just going to have it forever, right? But you can pay off that student loan, right? You can pay more and you pay it off quicker. I know radical math here. But if I get more intense, I can pay this thing off. But I think we become content with student loans like it's a family member, right? Like I'm just going to always have this. Like I always have a mortgage. I always have a car payment. But that limited belief will make it true. But one of the great things about WGU, and I work with hundreds of students that pay cash to go to school here, and they don't have to increase their debt. They're actually paying down other student loans while paying cash to come to WGU. It's just a different mindset in that I don't have to leave with a bunch of debt. I don't have to do it.
Well, and that's the great thing about WGU is our tuition is so low. We just had our first increase in 9 years, and it still is comparably lower to anywhere else. So we do have payment plans. You can make payments, and it's affordable payments that you can and still go to school and not have that student loan payment.
Very good. Another question. What if I don't have enough money to pay all the bills? It's a good question.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
It's scary first, I think, is the thing to say. And knowing that you're already behind before you start can make you actually spend more, is what I've seen with clients. And so I think the first thing you do, we call this your 4 walls. Like you're going to protect yourself first. You're going to cover food first, utilities second, your house payment third, and transportation fourth. So if you can do those 4 things, you're going to make it this month. Now, you may be behind on a bill or a credit card or something like that, but it will give you some short-term time to be able to then go and rectify the other situations. And that's where you may need to even seek some professional help, working with a financial counselor, sitting down with them and laying it out, because there's two sides to the equation. There's what I call the defense, which is or the money that you're spending, and then there's the offense. What money are you making? And you may need to go drive Uber or deliver pizzas, right, to cover that income difference. But first protect yourself with those 4 critical expenses. Then we need to get a longer term plan of how we're going to turn this around. And you know, in extreme situations, it may be a bankruptcy or, you know, something like that. But sitting down with someone who can look at it objectively is often a good step. And it doesn't necessarily even need to be a professional. It can be a family member who's great with money, or someone you know that's just willing to give you a second set of eyes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oftentimes there are resources available through work or through your church of somebody. I mean, I can't stress enough the value of having an objective third party help you look at those things, because oftentimes we're so ingrained in our lifestyles that what once were wants have become needs, and we feel like we cannot live without them. And that's what leads to the feeling that you can't make ends meet. You can't pay all these bills.
And it's easy to get turned around in that situation. And I've met with lots of families where they come in and their house payment is behind 3 months, but all their credit cards are up to date. And so their unsecured loans are all paid, but their house, you know, the basic necessity is behind. And they're like, I just wanted to be current on something. I just wanted to make progress on something. And so having that outside person look at it and say, no, like, you know, this is what we need to do. You need to do first.
Flip that almost.
Yeah, it can take some of the just emotion out of it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, the emotion, because I think, you know, when you're dealing with the day-to-day finances and you're in it, you know, you might be a little bit blinded and not able to think as clearly, to your point on having an outsider just objectively taking a look and making some recommendations. So
yeah, I'm a big fan of radically living below your means. You know, when you go to qualify for a mortgage or, you know, different things, it's really easy to take the max, right? It's really like our student loan. Like, it's really easy to ask for that extra money, you know, and for that to disappear. But when you have room in your budget, you have control and you have power.
Yeah, I like that. Well, we're coming up at the hour break, so we're going to just wrap up here. I have one more question, and then if you guys could give us maybe just some final parting words of wisdom, that would be great. This has been super helpful, so thank you for taking the time, and thank you for joining us here today. The question regarding financial aid: will I qualify for aid, and how much will I be eligible for? Obviously, there's going to be some specifics here, but can you give some general insight into this question?
Yeah, so most people will qualify for some type of aid, whether it's a Pell Grant, a subsidized, or an unsubsidized loan. Most people will qualify for some type of aid. So the first step is to fill out the FAFSA, to go fill out the FAFSA, and that will let us know, how much you would be eligible for. There are also restrictions based on your grade level, based on the program. We have a cost of attendance here that you can't borrow over a certain amount. So it really is specific to the person, and there's not a general amount. But most people, like I said, will qualify for the aid, and we'll have enough to cover the tuition and fees.
Okay, very good. Well, Jared, do you want to start? Any last comments as we wrap up here?
Yeah, my last comment is that we've worked with, thousands of people every year on having this conversation, and for a good majority of them, it feels overwhelming. But everybody, after going through kind of the process, feels better afterwards, right? Like, it will get better. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you're feeling financially burdened or stressed over your current situation, take it on and challenge it, and it will get better. Like, you can improve your situation. Everybody seems to find a way to make ends meet if they're trying to tackle it. I want to encourage everybody to do that.
Okay, thank you, Jared. Christy?
Just, like he said, that you have these student loans, and some people get overwhelmed with them or think they're always going to have a student loan payment. It doesn't have to be that way. There are ways to pay them off. There are ways to reduce your debt and to be able, cut costs so you can make those extra payment on that loans. And, just that we're here. If you have any questions, feel free, like I said, to reach out to us. But make sure that you're informed and that you're borrowing responsibly, that you're not taking out that extra the funds that you necessarily don't need.
Very good. Casey?
Both of those are great advice. My message would be just take that next step. Like sometimes thinking about everything that needs to happen can become so overwhelming that you kind of get paralysis, right? Like I don't know what to do next. Just take that next step, and if you're not working a budget, if you haven't started any of this, your next step is just to get it on paper. Just put something down on paper and start to dream, and seek some help if you need it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you again for your time. For Jared, Christy, and Casey, I'm Jeff, signing off here. Thanks for joining us today.